Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. So in the first data fundamentals session we have seen that what structured, semi-structured, unstructured, that is types of data. We have seen the file extensions and what are the types of databases. We have discussed about the relational databases, and now we are going to discuss about non-relational databases. Okay, so if you haven't watched that first video, please go and have a look at database fundamentals 1 and also the roadmap video that we are going to basically follow ahead. Okay, so let's discuss about non-relational databases. So we have seen that key value is basically used to store one single key that is unique, and the values that can be stored against each key. Okay, so in this way this is basically easy in order to filter out the data using specific key, right? Then moving ahead, the column family basically stores out the data in the format of columns so that it is easy to read the data through our naked eyes also. Okay, then we are having graph non-relational databases. Graph databases are basically used to store the data. The values are basically stored in these circles, that is basically considered as the nodes, and these arrows basically are the edges that define the relation between these two identities or entities. Okay, and the document that we are having, that is basically the when we are storing, let's suppose, any semi-structured file. So whenever we are storing the semi-structured file, we can use or mention it as a non-relational document databases. Let's see the examples now. For key value, I have shown you that each keys in the previous video I have shown. For each key we are having specific values. In graph database we are having these person are having the identities. These are having identities or entities. Okay, and these arrows basically define the relation between them. Okay, that what does it owns, who drives the car, so all the relation between them is basically defined by edges. And the column families, as I said, it is basically based on the column types. So in one column it will store the information of the single entity. Okay, so this is all about column database, and the document database is basically used to store the semi-structured type of data. Okay, now let's move ahead with it. So now comes the major process of entire data analysis or the working of data domain, that is ETL or ELT. The full form is extract, transform and load. Okay, very simple. Let me show you that you can define. So it is easily understood from this image also that we are extracting, we are having multiple databases here, 1 2 3. So here we are having 3 database, right? So either we can choose to extract this database into a single place and then do the data manipulations of them, or we can choose to work on single database individually. That will be much more time taking and time consuming as compared to the single data work, right? So that is why the first step is basically extracting all the data from multiple files. This can be a file also, database also, this can be a database or a file, anything. So there can be multiple data sources, there can be unlimited number of data sources. So from unlimited number of data sources, we are first extracting all the data into a single data warehouse, that is called as the central repository where we are storing the data. That we will discuss ahead in the theory. There is a lot to discuss on the theory also. So we will discuss that ahead, that how data is basically going after processing, what are the processing steps that is happening at the moment of extracting. All those things we are going to discuss ahead. Okay, so now let's have an overview that the data is coming from multiple data sources, and later once the data is collected we can use the transform method, or the transform process means that you are doing multiple manipulation like editing the name of the person, updating the mobile number, the contact information, the address, anything. So that we can basically do to transform the data, to manipulate the data, clean the data. And then at the final step, once our data is cleaned and ready to read, we are loading the same data to a central repository data warehouse, or we can either directly load the data in any of our visualization tool as well, like Power BI, Tableau, Looker, or anything, where we can read the data or understand that what is the thing that is present inside the data, what is the inside that is basically present inside the data. So that we can do by this entire ETL, that is extracting, transforming, and loading step. So this is the very major process of data domain. Now if I compare ETL versus ELT, there's one single just difference, that when under ETL process our data is first cleaned and then it is loaded finally to a central repository. But here in the ELT process, you can extract the data and load the data directly into the central repository, and you can manipulate it over there also. Like Power BI is one of the example where we can first load the data and then we can modify the data, transform the data according to our requirement. Okay, so these are basically the first two major process of the world of data. Okay, ETL and ELT. If you still have any doubt, please drop a comment. I will try to give a response as soon as possible. Okay, now coming to the second major concept on which everything is working on, everything is working with. Okay, so as I was giving, every process that I am basically going to explain ahead is similar to ETL only. Okay, so this is the backbone of data domain. If you understand ETL, you can do anything. Every step is basically included in this only. Now it may happen that between extracting and transforming there are more than 15 to 16 processes that is happening from the backend, so we are going to understand that only, but the overview is the ETL only. Okay, now coming to OLTP, this is also similar to that only. You can see here we are extracting the data, right? At the first stage we have OLTP. ETL I have explained you what exactly ETL is. Now let me explain you OLTP. OLTP means online transactional processing. Okay, online transactional processing. Okay, so online transactional processing means whenever you are storing a data, like in the first relational table, as I showed you that we cannot store all the data into a single table. We need to split that according to our requirement so that our processing is much more faster, right? So same thing is happening here, that we are storing the data into multiple databases or multiple files as per department. It is basically broken down. Like you can see HR database. So this includes the data that is present for the HRs. This includes the billing system. This includes the CRM, that is client relationship management. So all the data is basically distributed among each one of them. Okay, and this OLTP is online transactional processing database. As I'm mentioning the name, transactional processing means multiple or literally every e-commerce platform are nowadays using OLTP databases only, because these databases are having the properties of CRUD, that is creating, read, update and delete. Okay, please note that out. CRUD operations and ACID properties. CRUD means create, update, read and delete. So all the four operations can be done on OLTP platform. Then we are having the second property of OLTP is ACID property. ACID property stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation and let me just recall one thing. ACID D stands for, I guess, just give me a moment. I don't know what's happening, so let's come back to here. I will come back to that also. Acid property, acid atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Yeah, so atomicity means what? Atomicity means each and every transaction. Let's take an example that you are trying to do one payment of one product that you have bought, right? So there are three possibilities. Either your transaction will be successful and it will be generated in one transaction number itself. Either it is having a probability that either you do the transaction, the amount is debited from your end, but the company or the organization has not received it, right? Else you might have deducted the transaction, your transaction amount might have been deducted, but it has returned back to you, and it is also reflecting that the person ahead, the organization, has also received the payment. Okay, so these three are the possibilities, but in every possibilities a new transaction number will be generated, a new reference number will be generated. That is due to the atomicity property that says that every transaction is basically considered as one single identity. Consistency means it is consistent enough that every time one new transaction number will happen to begin, whether your transaction is successful or not. Isolation means each transaction will be basically tracked by it and it will be stored in the databases. Durability means these OLTP or databases are basically durable, and it is having a very good property that it is consistent in its work. Okay, so these four are basically the properties of OLTP. Now coming ahead to this, so you can see from multiple OLTP transactional databases, data is being extracted and it is basically getting transformed at the ELT step, right? The transformation is done. Now whenever we are loading the data, these data are basically loaded in OLAP. OLAP is what? Online analytical processing. Online analytical processing, where why it is called as online analytical processing. So online analytical processing is also termed as the cube processing. As you can see, it is mentioned as hypercube. Hypercube means it is having multiple possibilities. Possibilities means we can see the data or we can think of the data from multiple point of view, like multiple dimensions. One dimension can be this, one dimension can be this, one dimension can be this. So for the another cube we can have all three again dimensions, and all four edges are having multiple dimensions. So we can basically view the data from multiple perspectives. We can get multiple insights from data. Let me summarize the thing. OLTP is basically used to store the data. Okay, store the data in more accurate and more uniform way, while ETL is a process to transform and process the data. Then OLAP is basically the analytical processing, where we can get more and more business insights from the data. Okay, so this is the important process that you must be aware about in the terms of data. Still, if you have any doubt, please drop a comment. I will definitely try to resolve your query as soon as possible. Okay, thank you so much, and let's see you in the another video.